Alright, so what we're starting on is the slab box. So you'll roll out your slab to a 1/4 inch thick, like you usually do. Then you'll take a ruler. Trying to decide which slab. Can I have that ruler, please? Thank you. And you'll cut 2 10-inch strips. So just cut a nice straight line. Then I just cut on the other side of the ruler. That gives me a wide enough strip. I cut a nice square edge at the end of the ruler, so I get nice clean strips. And I'll just move it over to the other side. I'm going to go all the way over here so I don't waste too much clay. Go all the way down. Again, it's 10-inch strips. So I'll set it right at 10 inches. And you can do longer ones if you want. You can do any shape you'd like. I'll show you a few examples after we're done. Of some other designs, but I'll keep it fairly simple for the demo. And keep your scraps because you can roll your coils out with those. So those are my 2 strips. You can make them thicker if you want. Sometimes I use the paint stick to make them a little bit thicker if you want a taller box that'll hold more items. So I'm going to scoot that to the side for my strips later. And you could do this in all in one slab. I just rolled out some fairly small slabs. So now it's time to make my shape. So I'm going to take my 2 strips, put them all the way as close to the edge as I can so I'm not wasting clay. I'm going to make my shape. I'll do a little heart. Just get your shape as neat as you can. And I always join the joints like this just so that they will fit a little bit better and they don't have to blend so much on the edges. You could bevel them like we did in the last project. Now I'm going to trace around the heart, keeping the needle tool angled a little bit so it cuts a nice edge. Try not to angle it underneath your box, otherwise you'll have a little edge that sticks out as far as the strips. Okay, so I'll set these aside. And I don't straighten them back out just because if they start to dry, they'll be harder to bend again. So now I have my little heart shape. I'm going to make another one on the other side. This time I'm going to trace it a little further out than my slab. So I usually just use the body of the needle tool, especially if you have a small thick wooden one. But just a little bit further because this one's going to be embossed or stick out. This will be my lid that I'm cutting right now. So a little bit further than where the original was. Don't be worried if you don't cut it perfectly straight, it'll be okay. You'll be able to blend a lot of those little extra pieces. So then all this extra clay I can use to roll coils on the inside when I get there. So I'm going to go back to focusing on the bottom. Make sure that you don't flip-flop too much so you know exactly which way it fits on. So now I'm going to score and slip the underside of these and around the shape. Try not to get too far in on the outside edge so that way you don't have score marks to clean up at the end. So I know this one goes on this side, so I'm going to flip it, score it, and slip it. Will you give me the slip, please? Thank you. Okay, slip all the way around. If you get a hefty enough amount of slip on one side, you don't have to slip both sides. But if you get really thin slip, or you just don't put enough on, you might have to do both sides. Okay, move this out of the way. Okay, and when I do it, I set it right at that edge and the point of the heart, or wherever you're starting, on whatever shape you make. And I just push that strip all the way out until it touches my finger, and then just lightly blend it for now. So I can see it's a little bit short on this point, so I need to stretch it out a little bit more. There we go. Then I'm just getting rid of a little bit of slip. Now it's time for the other side. Go ahead and slip that. Okay. And I'll score the other side, the other strip. Feel free to change these along the way. Last year somebody started on a heart and ended up with a fish, so. And the fish was fantastic. It was really good. Made me proud. So again, just kind of tapping the edge so that it's flush with the outside. So I'm not overstretching it. It'll make it all the way to the bottom there. And then blending the side a little bit. Little hairs. And then I'm going to blend the bottom just a little bit and the top, where the two pieces come together. Just using my finger. If you can't reach it, just use your modeling tool. Modeling tool is just glorified finger. Okay. Make sure you have your lid cut at this point. Then you're going to roll out a coil using your scraps before you put your lid on. You definitely want your lid to dry a bit, otherwise it won't emboss, so it won't pop up. Use a little bit of this. And you want these coils to be pretty skinny, just enough to support the inside, but not where you're adding a whole lot of bulk to the project. So I have a long one over here already rolled out. A little Food Network action. Alright. So I'm going to score along the side of this whole thing. Probably won't use but maybe 3/4 of it. Then I'll take my needle tool on the inside edge and just lightly score. And I'll show you where I'm scoring in just a second. Okay, I'm just scoring inside this little edge here in the corner because I'm going to put a coil in there. So with the coil, I start in one point. What happens if you don't put a coil? Usually they crack, or it may sag a lot, and then you don't get the points too. It says 10 points just for putting a coil inside. Oops, forgot slip. That would help. Okay, so add slip on that corner. But yeah, it just gives the box more strength. And it makes it smoother, it doesn't have sharp edges. I'll show you a non-example and an example in a minute, once we're finished. So I'm going to start with this all the way in the corner. And just push that, make sure you support the sidewall that you're pushing against. And I just slowly work my way up. Don't skip too far ahead. because you want this coil to be as easy to blend as possible and as flush as possible. You could do this all in one coil. I usually break them at the top. I'm actually going to go all the way around. Oops, that one's snapping there. So again, baby steps, pinching all the way around and supporting the side wall. Okay, then I just go around and smooth. It doesn't take very long. So while I'm on that topic, and that was a good question, I'll show you the inside of this one. You'll see the coil down there. It's flush, and then up here as well. It kind of makes it more rounded. So like that. And then a non-example. This is one that didn't have the coils. It has the coil on the bottom, but it doesn't have it in the top. So it leaves those kind of nasty lines, little sharp edges on the inside. Alright. So now I've got that fairly flush down there. Just kind of cleaning it up with my fingers. So you can see I have a lot more blending to do with the modeling tool. Spend a little time. It's perfect to allow your lid to dry. And I let this slab dry a little bit. Smooth lid. I let it dry, so it should be pretty good to emboss a little bit. I like to let it dry for a little bit longer than it has. I made the slab yesterday in hopes it would be dry enough today. As far as the edge, sometimes you can just kind of use your smooth rib or your modeling tool, whatever works best for you. Make sure you don't see the lines on the outside, so it just looks like one joined unit. Okay. Then on the inside, just use your modeling tool to make sure you can't see any of that coil. It should be kind of hard for somebody who's looking at it or critiquing it to see that there's a coil there. It just should be smooth and flush. But they'll know because there's going to be a curve instead of a really sharp edge. So that one's almost done. We'll just do one side for you. Just to show you, it doesn't take that long. Alright. So it's not perfect yet, but you can see the one side, the good side, and then the side that's not blended yet. Now for the lid. After I've blended all that, I'm ready to put my lid on. Figure out what's this way. So I turned it around. So my lid should have dried a little bit. You're just going to push with 2 fingers. 2 or 3, depending on how big your hands are. And you want it to protrude, or emboss as they call it. And that's why you make it a little bit bigger, because you're kind of taking away a little bit of its span. I'm just pushing on it. Then I'll score and slip the edges. Score and slip this edge. You want to get this right on the edge. Push it out a little bit more. Okay, then I'm going to set it right on top. Hopefully it stays sticking up. Try to get it as flush as possible. just press the edge so that the top stays popped up. I actually flipped the heart over the wrong way, but I can fix it. Just like I said not to do in the beginning. We're just going to cut off a little extra piece here. Just staying flush with the little strips that I made initially. So yeah, if you have any overhang, just kind of cut it off as clean as you can. And then I'm just trying to match that edge with my finger, just pushing it in. Excuse me. Then I'm going to take my smooth rib and blend whatever way is hanging over more. I'll blend that way. So if the top is hanging over more, I'll blend down. If the bottom is hanging out more, then I'll blend up. So in different spots, you'll see it sticks out in different ways. Oops, it's hanging out a little bit more there. Okay. So then I would cut my lid with the X-Acto blade, and just make sure you have some sort of notch in there. Get creative with it. I saw some really creative cuttings on the stencil box, and they do these wild little swirls and things like that. Just make sure that you think about function when you do it, form and function. Make sure it matches your body or the shape that you've designed, and make sure that it is going to function as a lid and it's going to come off. It's not going to stick together permanently. Okay, I'm not going to cut this until it dries, and when you do cut it with the X-Acto blade, make sure you cut the lid and let it dry for a couple days. Not completely out, but let it dry during the period and then bag it before you put it in your locker. Does anybody have any questions?